Have you ever noticed how much of your day is stolen not by what happens to you, but by how much you cling to what other people do? Think about it. How many times did you replay a conversation in your head today? How many times did you explain yourself over and over to someone who had already made up their mind about you? How many times did you scroll through your phone, furious about a comment from someone who doesn't even know you, building a courtroom in your head where you win an argument that never needed to happen? We live in a world where the most valuable thing we have, our attention, is constantly hijacked by noise. We give our peace away to strangers. We bleed our energy into family fights that never end. And we sacrifice our clarity by trying to edit everyone else's story. And what's worse, we think this is normal. We think this is just life. But what if I told you that peace, the peace you've been chasing all your life, doesn't come from making the world finally agree with you? What if the secret is much simpler, much quieter, and much more powerful? That secret is two little words. Let them. Not passive, not careless, not weak, but disciplined, wise, liberating. Let them misunderstand you. Let them misjudge you. Let them think you're arrogant. Let them assume you're wrong. Let them walk away. Let them stay stuck in their ways. Let them scroll by your story without a second glance. Let them whisper behind your back. Because none of that determines who you are. And none of that has the power to touch the center of your being unless you hand it over. This video is about reclaiming that center. It's about remembering that peace is not a prize other people can give you, but a practice you have to protect every single day. And before we dive in, I want you to ask yourself one honest question. How many times have I lost peace not because life was unbearable, but because I couldn't let them? Stay with me, because over the next hour we're going to explore why letting people be who they are is not weakness, but mastery. We're going to break down the difference between boundaries and control, the way expectations poison our relationships, the traps of constant reaction, and the freedom that comes when you stop outsourcing your peace to the moods of others. We'll look at the wisdom of the Stoics, the practices of mindfulness, and the living examples all around us of people who learned the art of letting go and, in the process, found a life worth living. But let me make you a promise. This is not going to be another hollow motivational talk. I'm not here to sprinkle cliches on your wounds. I want to walk with you into the raw truth of why you're tired, why you're anxious, why you feel drained even on days when nothing went wrong. I want to show you that most of that exhaustion comes from a single source, the relentless, invisible project of trying to control what was never yours to control. And when you learn to finally stop, when you breathe, when you whisper those words, let them, you will feel a space open in your life that you didn't even realize had been occupied for years. So if you've ever wanted to live with more clarity, if you've ever wished you could stop rehearsing imaginary battles, if you've ever longed for the kind of peace that doesn't depend on other people behaving perfectly, then this video is for you. And I want you to stay until the very end, because the conclusion is not just theory, it's a call to action that could change how you live your next 24 hours. Now, before we get started, let me ask you one small favor. If this resonates with you, if you believe more people need this message, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm, and, more importantly, it tells me that this kind of content matters to you. Share this with someone you love who's drowning in the chaos of control. Subscribe if you haven't already, so you never miss these deep dives into philosophy, psychology, and the art of living. And if you feel this channel adds value to your life, consider supporting it with a super thanks. It helps me keep creating and allows this community to grow. Alright, take a deep breath, let go of the script you're carrying about how the world should act. And let this be the moment where you stop fighting for control and start choosing peace. Because your freedom begins not when they finally change, but when you finally decide. Let them. He'd always been a fixer. The kind of person who straightened crooked pictures in restaurants, who rewrote team emails so they wouldn't be misunderstood, who turned every family gathering into a strategic summit about what each person should do next. At first, his confidence looked like competence. People even thanked him for taking charge. But slowly, something inside him frayed. The more he tried to calibrate other people, the more he felt strangely out of calibration himself. He woke up rehearsing conversations that might never happen, drafting replies to messages no one had sent, arguing with versions of people that existed only in his head. He was present everywhere except in his own life. And the paradox gnawed at him, the harder he gripped for peace. The faster it slipped through his fingers. What he couldn't see, what most of us miss, is that chasing peace through control is like trying to dry your hands with a faucet. The very tool you're using is the source of what keeps you wet. If you want to understand why peace keeps eluding you, start by looking at the stories you tell yourself about responsibility. Modern life subtly trains you to believe that if something feels off, you're obligated to do something. Someone posts a passive-aggressive comment, you must correct it. Your partner seems distant, you must diagnose it. A coworker makes a decision you dislike, you must countermand it. We keep a scoreboard of other people's behaviors and imagine that our vigilance is virtue. But most of this is not care, it's control with better PR. It's an ego costume that mistakes micromanagement for love and interference for leadership. And it is the reason so many of us are exhausted before noon. The human nervous system isn't built to process an infinite stream of contingencies, yet our phones present a never-ending simulation in which everything is actionable. Everyone is reachable, and every disagreement is a summons. You live in a world that can ping you into war at any moment. Of course you feel on edge. Of course you feel like peace is always one more explanation, one more clarifying message, one more stern boundary meeting away. The problem isn't only that you're trying to control people, it's that you've been conned into believing your serenity depends on it. The philosophical cure begins with a distinction so simple it almost sounds naive. Some things are within your control, others are not. That's Stoicism 101. But it's also psychological oxygen. If you live as if everything is your job, you will live as if nothing is your choice. The Stoic move is not to stop caring, it's to stop conflating caring with controlling. Put differently, you can choose your words, not the meaning someone else assigns to them. You can decide your effort, not the result. You can choose your standards, not their behavior. You can influence, but you cannot command. The moment that lands, your nervous system gets its first breath of real air because your attention stops ricocheting between 1,000 ungovernable variables and returns to the one sovereign territory you actually own: your judgments, your choices, your actions. Epictetus's school framed peace as a practice of attention learned to put your concern only where your agency lives, and modern cognitive science agrees. If anxiety is the price of trying to predict and preempt everything, then serenity is the dividend of narrowing your investment to what's truly yours. The "let them" mindset is a contemporary translation of that ancient boundary. It's not passivity, it's clarity. Let them misread your text. Let them speak over you in a meeting. Let them choose aesthetics you'd never pick. Let them walk away. Let them stay stuck, not because you're jaded or weak, but because you are finished donating your sanity to outcomes you do not control. This is an offensive, not defensive, posture. You are not retreating from life. You're reclaiming the energy you've been bleeding into 100 battles you never had to fight. Properly understood, let them is not a surrender, it's a sorting mechanism. It reveals who people actually are when you stop holding up the costume of who you wish they would be. It reveals where your real influence ends and where your fantasy begins. And this part matters, it reveals who you are without the noise. When your worth isn't being constantly mailed out for external postage, you can measure the cost of control in hours of lost attention. Try a thought experiment. Imagine paying $1 for every thought you spend on someone else's behavior, every imagined clap back, every drafted, just to clarify, note, every replayed conversation where you finally said the perfect line. At the end of a week, how much debt would you carry? What else could that budget have bought? Fitness, craft, rest, an unhurried meal with your kid? The "let them" practice tells you to stop funding the economy of obsession. It asks you to purchase presence with the currency of non-interference. It reminds you that obsessing over others is a socially permitted form of self-neglect. When you stop doing it, you suddenly notice the life you were too busy managing to actually live. This insight isn't just internet wisdom, it's now part of a broad, popular conversation about letting go, one that emphasizes releasing responsibility for other people's choices while strengthening your boundaries and well-being. The through line is consistent. Reclaim your time and peace by letting others be exactly who they are without letting it yank your center off balance. Before someone objects, let's deal with the fear that "let them" is a recipe for being walked over. That fear confuses two different moves: refusing to control and refusing to protect yourself. These are not the same. Let them, says. Stop trying to manage what they think, feel, or choose. Boundaries say. Start managing the distance at which you allow them to stand. You can exit a relationship without launching a campaign to prove you're right. You can say, I don't participate in conversations where people shout, without trying to reparent the person who's shouting. You can decline a project with a teammate who chronically under-delivers without running a crusade to convert them into someone who doesn't. You can be kind and still be done. In fact, refusal to control people often clarifies boundaries more quickly because the other person is no longer performing for your pressure. They reveal themselves. You respond to what is, not what you're choreographing. That's not cynicism, that's sobriety. Why does this matter so much now? Because the social architecture of our era rewards reactive control. Algorithms goose our attention with conflict. Comment sections are tuned to keep you litigating strangers' motives. Workplace tools make everyone instantly reachable, creating a false emergency around every preference. Even friendship is being rewritten by mobility and technology. People come and go more fluidly than ever. Which means you cannot stabilize your identity by freezing your social world in place. The wiser posture is to loosen your script about how relationships must look. Accept that proximity and timing are as fluid as energy. And meet people where they are rather than where your nostalgia insists they should remain. That shift from expecting stability to working with flux feels like loss at first. But it's actually relief. It grants you the flexibility to stop resenting people for moving at the speed of their own lives. It grants you permission to redirect energy from managing realities to growing capacities. It is, in short, an invitation to stop editorializing other people and start editing your own habits. To make this concrete, go back to the fixer at the beginning. Imagine he's in a brainstorming meeting. A colleague shoots down his idea with a smirk. His old pattern: defend, re-explain, gather allies, correct the smirk with a retaliatory aside. His new pattern: breathe, take the point that serves the work, let the rest go. After the meeting, he chooses whether to address tone privately. Not because he needs an apology to sleep tonight, but because he wants a healthier collaboration next month. That difference between reacting to soothe a spike in your nervous system and responding to serve a longer aim is the space where peace lives. Now shift to home. His partner forgets a plan. Old him. Make it a referendum on commitment. Rehearse old disappointments. Demand a vow. New him. Let them own their calendar. Decide what standard he needs to feel respected. Communicate that standard without prosecuting their character. He stops outsourcing his emotional regulation to compliance from others. He begins building a life where his dignity doesn't wobble every time someone else does. There's a reason the Stoics recommended a morning mental rehearsal. Assume in advance that you'll meet selfish, ungrateful, arrogant, confused people today, and decide now that their turbulence won't pilot your mind. That's not pessimism, it's shock absorption. If you expect the world to act like the world, you stop being scandalized when it does. You become free to be principled instead of triggered. This is why the old emperor's advice still reads like a modern productivity hack. Pre-accept the day's mess so you can meet it with steadiness rather than with performative outrage. When you internalize that stance, you don't have to micromanage the cast of characters, you just keep your role clean. You reduce the number of interpersonal fires you're constantly trying to put out because you stop flinging sparks of indignation at every perceived slight. For many people, the stickiest objection remains: but what if they're wrong about me? What if they misunderstand, misjudge, mislabel? Let them feels intolerable in the court of reputation. The trick is to notice how much of your day is already a plea bargain with imaginary juries. You preemptively defend yourself to people who aren't thinking about you. You explain a joke no one misread. You add 10 disclaimers to a simple boundary. You try to angle every sentence so it can't be quoted out of context. And then you resent the exhaustion of performing. Freedom here is not a refusal to communicate, it's a refusal to audition. You show your work, not your worry. You let time do what time is good at revealing patterns. A month of consistent behavior will clarify your character more than 1,000 anxious clarifications. And if someone persists in misreading you, stop assuming you've failed to express yourself. Start assuming they're committed to their lens. That's not your homework. Your homework is to live in a way that even your critics end up inadvertently testifying to your standards. There is also a kind of control that masquerades as optimism, insisting on people's potential while ignoring their track record. We try to motivate, coach, hint, inspire, nudge, warn. We become amateur therapists and full-time apologists. The result is a fragile harmony that collapses the moment we stop propping it up. When you let people be who they demonstrate they are, you stop living in the exhausting gap between your fantasy and their reality. You also stop placing bets with other people's chips. Healthy love refuses to rescue adults from their own lessons. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is to stop intercepting consequences that don't belong to you. That's not cruelty, it's coherence. It's a vote of confidence that the other person can learn the way humans have always learned, by feeling the friction of reality against the stories they tell themselves. Letting experience teach doesn't mean you abandon someone, it means you stop playing God in a universe that already has one. If you want a field guide for daily practice, build a few small habits. First, institute a gap ritual. When you feel the urge to explain, defend, correct, or rescue, take 3 slow breaths before responding. Label the urge out loud if you can. I want to control. It sounds simple, but naming interrupts spirals. Second, run the 3-question filter. Is this mine to fix? Is this mine to carry? Is this mine to hold? If the answer is no, the next move isn't another paragraph, it's a pause. Third, adopt a last word fast. For 1 week, practice letting the last public word belong to the other person. You're not capitulating, you're conserving. You'll be startled by how many arguments evaporate when your ego stops feeding them. Fourth, budget your attention. Remember the $1 per thought exercise from earlier and actually track a day. Spend less on resentment, more on craft. Redirection is not denial, it's design. You are designing your interior life by what you repeatedly attend to. As you apply these, you will occasionally confuse tolerance with timidity, silence with self-erasure. That's where boundaries return as your ballast. A boundary is not a speech about the other person's flaws, it's a policy about your own participation. I don't respond to messages after 8 p.m. if meetings become abusive. I leave. I don't lend money to friends. These are not moral verdicts, they're operating rules. They allow you to let people be whoever they're bent on being without letting their choices colonize your nervous system. What you'll learn is that half your former exhaustion came from trying to be both the thermostat and the weather. You wanted to set the temperature while simultaneously controlling the climate. Thermostats work when they regulate internal systems, not external storms. Put your settings where your agency lives. But won't I become cold? Stoicism's reputation for chill often hides its actual heat. Deep ethical commitment without melodrama. The Stoic goal isn't indifference to people, it's indifference to illusions. It's not that nothing matters, it's that not everything merits a reaction. You save your intensity for what aligns with your values. You become able to absorb a slight without spinning up a crusade. To exit a room without burning the house down. To disagree without needing the other person to repent on the spot. That gives you back the best of your energy, creative power, humor, generosity. You're no longer living on the edge of constant prosecution. You're actually available to build, to love, to rest. There's a broader cultural wisdom here too. Many of us were trained to confuse being a good person with being endlessly available. Add a smartphone in a culture of hot-take righteousness, and you get a generation of people whose conscience is permanently hijacked by the loudest signal in the room. Let them returns you to moral agency. It lets you say, I will be kind, but I will not be captured. I will be open, but I will not be porous. I will be responsible for my choices, not for the weather patterns of other people's moods. Oddly, the more you practice that stance, the more free other people become around you. Because you're no longer smuggling expectations into every interaction. You aren't auditioning them for a part in your script. You're meeting them as they are, deciding what distance honors both of you, and then living your decision without theatrics. If you still need a bridge between theory and action, borrow one more Stoic tactic. Pre-accept what the day will bring. The Emperor Philosopher's Morning Counsel Expect Difficult People was not a call to cynicism but to composure. A way to immunize your mind against shock so you can choose your conduct rather than let your environment choose it for you. When you expect disruption, You stop insisting that peace requires perfect conditions. You recognize peace as a skill rather than a situation, a muscle rather than a miracle, and muscles grow through repetition. So you repeat the practice in small, unglamorous moments, letting a stranger be wrong about their car line etiquette, letting a colleague take credit you didn't need, letting a friend sit in their feelings without rushing to reframe them. Each time you don't reach for control, you reinforce the truth that your peace was never stored in other people to begin with. Zoom out and the pattern becomes obvious. We don't find peace because we keep misplacing agency. We hand it to the group chat, to the algorithm, to the coworker who can't help himself, to the uncle with the reflex to bait, to the ghost audience of people we're trying to impress. We burn our best focus trying to choreograph a play whose cast doesn't know our lines. Let them is the decision to step off that stage. It's permission to let real life be messy while you keep your side of the street clean. It's permission to be generous without being a sponge, to be discerning without being a judge, to be stable without being stone. And as strange as it sounds, the first sign that you're getting it right is not that everyone around you becomes easier. It's that you become less easy to knock off center. People will still misunderstand. Some will still try to provoke. A few will walk away. But you will stop treating any of that as a referendum on your worth. You'll treat it as weather. And weather is survived not by yelling at clouds, but by carrying an umbrella and continuing on. This is why the first chapter of any honest peace project can't be about what the world should do differently. It has to be about where you are putting your attention. If you're scattering it across every external variable, you will live scattered. If you gather it back to the few things that are truly yours, your words, your effort, your standards, you will live gathered. And a gathered life is a peaceful one. Not because it avoids friction, but because it refuses to be defined by it. Let them be who they are. Let yourself become who you are when you finally stop trying to run everybody else's show. The space that opens is the space where your real life has been waiting. The phrase, "let them," sounds deceptively simple, almost like a shrug, but when you unpack it, you realize it's a radical act of self-preservation and clarity. Most people hear those two words and think of weakness, of giving up, of passivity. But "let them" is the opposite of surrender. It is mastery. It is the discipline of refusing to let your mind be hijacked by circumstances or people that are not within your control. When you live with the mindset of "let them," you are not saying nothing matters. You are saying you finally see clearly what matters and what does not. You are no longer wasting your life force trying to bend reality into your preference. You are no longer exhausting yourself by trying to edit other people's scripts. You are standing in your own center and acknowledging that you cannot choreograph the world. And more importantly, you do not need to. This is where Stoicism comes in. The Stoics used the term apatheia, which does not mean apathy in the modern sense of not caring, but rather freedom from being ruled by irrational passions or external chaos. The Stoics practiced a kind of indifference, not toward life itself, but toward the illusions that life presents. When Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that you must be prepared each morning to meet ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest people, he wasn't encouraging bitterness, he was encouraging readiness. He was saying, let them act as they will, because they will, and you cannot stop that. Your job is not to control their choices but to control your own response. The modern translation, "let them," is the same wisdom, boiled down to two words you can carry in your pocket when the day provokes you. It is Stoicism for the smartphone era, the practice of not being tossed about by every ping, every opinion, every provocation, but instead remaining clear and grounded. To see this in action, picture a friend who constantly criticizes you. Maybe they comment on your choices, your job, your relationships, even your clothes. The instinct is to argue, to explain, to defend yourself, to try to win them over to your perspective. But how many hours have you lost doing that? How many times have you walked away from a conversation replaying it in your head, thinking of better comebacks, more persuasive arguments, only to realize that nothing changed? The "let them" mindset says, let them think what they think. Let them carry their judgment. It's not yours to carry. You are not obligated to convince them of your worth. Your worth is not up for debate. By letting them keep their criticism, you keep your peace. You stop renting out your energy to someone else's opinion. You preserve your own center. Now imagine you're at work and you have a colleague who thrives on debate. Who argues every point? Who delights in dragging meetings into endless sparring matches? The temptation is to meet fire with fire, to prove them wrong, to defend your ground. But every time you engage, you leave drained, your mind buzzing with irritation, your productivity wrecked. Let them here does not mean let them dominate you. It means let them enjoy their theater without forcing yourself to buy a ticket. You can step out, you can stay focused on the actual work, make your contributions, and decline the invitation to wrestle. They can continue to argue into the void, but you are no longer in the ring. The moment you stop needing to win their game, you win your freedom. You redirect your energy back to your own priorities, instead of being baited into endless contests that have no prize. Or think of family dynamics, which are often the most charged. A parent who insists you live according to their values. A sibling who always tells you how to run your life. A relative who refuses to understand your decisions. For many people, this is the hardest arena to practice. Let them, because the stakes feel personal. But this is where it's most liberating. Let them have their opinion. Let them believe you are making mistakes. Let them cling to their picture of you. Because if you spend your life trying to rewrite their narrative, you'll never live your own. When you let them think as they will, you create space for yourself to grow into who you actually are. Not who they insist you should be. That space is where real peace comes from. It's not about cutting people off, but about cutting the cords of control that keep you entangled in endless cycles of reaction. The power of let them is that it creates a border around your soul. It's not a wall of hostility. It's a line of clarity. It says, I can care about you. I can even love you. But I will not make your behavior my burden. I will not give you the keys to my mood, my energy, my self-worth. That is mine to guard. And paradoxically, when you stop trying to change people, you finally see them more clearly. You see how they act when they are not performing for your approval. You learn who they are when left alone with their own choices. Sometimes that's disappointing, but it's always clarifying. And clarity, even when it hurts, is better than illusion, because only from truth can you make decisions that honor your own peace. What's crucial to understand is that let them is not resignation. It doesn't mean tolerating disrespect or abuse. It doesn't mean becoming a doormat. It means you separate two jobs, theirs and yours. Their job is to live their life. Your job is to decide how much access they get to yours. If someone repeatedly crosses your boundaries, let them does not mean staying silent while suffering. It means you don't waste energy trying to change them. Instead, you calmly enforce your limits, distance, boundaries, consequences. You don't fight to rewrite their character. You write your own rules for engagement. That's why, let them is not weakness. Weakness is letting yourself be controlled by the need to control. Strength is knowing when to walk away without a scene, without a speech, without needing to be right. That's mastery. In daily life, practicing let them feels like a small revolution. A stranger cuts you off in traffic. Let them. A coworker takes credit for an idea. Let them. Then quietly document your work and keep moving. A friend cancels plans last minute again. Let them. And decide how much you want to invest next time. A social media troll misrepresents your words. Let them. And resist the temptation to type out a 10-paragraph defense. Each act of letting go is like taking back an ounce of your own sanity. Over time, those ounces add up to pounds, and then to a whole new posture toward life. You start to wake up less tired because your mind isn't constantly rehearsing imaginary battles. You start to feel more creative because your energy isn't siphoned into correcting everyone else. You start to feel more present because you're no longer outsourcing your mood to the whims of others. Think about how many times peace has been within reach, only for you to lose it because you couldn't just let them. How many arguments dragged on long after they should have ended? How many sleepless nights replaying conversations? How many days ruined by one person's comment? Each of those is a toll paid to the highway of control. Let them is the exit ramp. It's the moment you stop driving in circles around other people's behavior and start moving forward on your own road. And the road feels lighter because you're no longer hauling cargo that doesn't belong to you. Ultimately, the message is simple. When you let others be who they are, you create space to be who you are. Most of us have been so busy trying to manage the external world that we've neglected our internal one. But the truth is, the external world will never sit still. People will always misunderstand, misjudge, misbehave. If your peace depends on fixing that, you will never know peace. But if your peace depends on your own clarity, your own boundaries, your own choices, then no storm can take it from you. Let them is not a retreat from life, it is a return to yourself. And that, more than anything, is mastery. The human impulse to control is one of the oldest and most stubborn patterns we carry. It begins subtly, almost invisibly. You want your child to do well, so you guide them. You want your partner to feel supported, so you make suggestions. You want your colleagues to succeed, so you step in with advice. At first, it looks like care. It feels like love, but underneath, what's often driving it is not compassion but the need to manage. The habit of control grows like ivy, slowly, persistently, until it has wrapped itself around everything you touch. And then one day you wake up and realize you're exhausted, not because the world is cruel, but because you've been trying to hold it all in your hands. This is the paradox of control. The tighter you grip, the more peace slips away. What you thought would bring order instead breeds chaos inside you. Control is seductive because it masquerades as responsibility. We convince ourselves that if we just work harder at managing others, things will turn out better. Parents believe if they micromanage every detail of their child's life, they will protect them from harm. Lovers believe if they correct and coach their partner enough, they will shape the perfect relationship. Managers believe if they monitor every move, their team will excel. But life does not yield to force. Children rebel, partners resist, teams suffocate. Control rarely produces the outcome we think it will. Instead, it produces resentment in others and depletion in ourselves. You don't just waste energy, you warp relationships. Instead of genuine connection, you get compliance or resistance. Instead of trust, you get performance. And deep down, you know it's unsustainable. Every act of control is a small loan taken from your energy reserves. And eventually the debt comes due. Expectations are the softer cousin of control, but just as destructive. Expectations are the unspoken scripts we write for other people without their consent. You expect your spouse to read your mind and know what you need without you saying it. You expect your friend to prioritize you the way you prioritize them. You expect your coworkers to share your standards and values. When they inevitably fail to meet these invisible demands, you feel betrayed. But what really happened? They didn't break a promise, they broke a story you wrote for them in your head. And when love gets entangled with expectation, it transforms into a subtle form of control. At first, the expectation feels sweet. I love you, so of course you'll want to do this for me. But soon it becomes pressure. If you really loved me, you would. That pressure crushes joy. It turns love into a test. It makes every interaction a referendum on loyalty. And eventually, it drains the relationship of the freedom that made it alive in the first place. The consequences of living this way are brutal. You become perpetually tired, not because you're doing too much, but because you're doing the wrong things, carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. Your nervous system runs in overdrive, constantly scanning for what others are doing wrong, constantly rehearsing conversations to correct them. You lose your center. Instead of acting from clarity, you react from fear. Instead of building your own life, you become an unpaid manager of everyone else's. And the irony is, the more energy you spend trying to control, the less influence you actually have. People stop listening. They grow defensive. They pull away. You become not the steady presence in their life, but the storm they're always bracing against. You don't just lose peace, you lose connection. Because real connection can only happen when both people feel free. Consider the story of a parent who desperately wants their child to succeed. They choose their child's extracurriculars, dictate their study habits, steer their career aspirations. Every choice is defended with the logic of love. I only want what's best for you. But the child doesn't feel loved, they feel suffocated. Their life feels like someone else's script. And when they finally rebel, dropping out of a program, choosing a different career, moving away, the parent feels betrayed, not realizing they were the ones who betrayed the child first by refusing to let them own their own path. What was intended as care became control, and what was intended as protection became a cage. This is how love, twisted by expectation, can corrode the very bond it seeks to preserve. Or think of a relationship where one partner falls in love with potential rather than reality. She loves him, but only if he reads more books, dresses differently, pursues a better career. He loves her, but only if she loses weight, changes her personality, spends less time with friends. At first, each tries to adjust, but resentment simmers. The relationship becomes a negotiation of conditions rather than an exchange of acceptance. Eventually, one partner breaks under the weight of being constantly rewritten. They leave, not because love was absent, but because love was conditional. This is the tragedy of control disguised as expectation. It erases the actual person in favor of an imagined version. And in the end, both people lose. Stoicism offers a blunt but liberating perspective on this trap. Marcus Aurelius, writing to himself in the quiet hours of early morning, reminded his mind, "Today you will meet the ungrateful, the arrogant, the deceitful, the jealous, the selfish." He was not indulging in cynicism but in preparation. By expecting people to act according to their nature rather than your hopes, you immunize yourself against shock. You stop wasting energy being outraged by the obvious. You stop demanding that the world be other than it is. This isn't pessimism, it's realism. When you already know the world will include difficult people, you don't collapse when you encounter them. You stay steady. You choose your conduct instead of being dragged into theirs. You let them be who they are, and you remain who you are. Modern life makes this harder because it constantly sells us the illusion of control. Technology trains us to believe everything is customizable. Our playlists, our news feeds, our deliveries. We start to expect the same on-demand compliance from people. We want spouses to sync with our moods like apps. We want colleagues to adjust as smoothly as software updates. But humans are not programmable. They are unpredictable, messy, contradictory. When you expect them to act like algorithms, you set yourself up for endless disappointment. And when you hold yourself responsible for making them fit your script, you condemn yourself to endless exhaustion. The truth is, the more you try to control others, the more you lose yourself. Your sense of worth becomes entangled with their compliance. Your peace depends on their behavior. You live as a hostage to variables you cannot command. And the cost is your energy, your clarity, your joy. To break this cycle, you must see control for what it is, not love, not leadership, but fear in disguise. Fear of uncertainty, fear of rejection, fear of letting others make mistakes. But mistakes are the curriculum of life. And trying to steal them from others only robs both of you of growth. You cannot protect someone from being human. You can only walk alongside them while protecting your own peace. When you finally release the need to control, a strange thing happens. You don't lose power, you gain it. You stop being reactive, always on defense, always strategizing. Instead, you become responsive, deliberate, steady. People sense it. They may still test your boundaries, but you no longer wobble. And paradoxically, this steadiness gives you more influence than control ever did. Because people trust those who don't need to dominate them. They open up to those who don't try to rewrite them. They respect those who respect themselves enough not to spend their energy trying to micromanage the universe. That's why the Stoics were right. Peace doesn't come from making others predictable. It comes from making yourself unshakable. And the first step toward that peace is the courage to say, I don't control this. I don't expect this. I release this. I remain myself. At work, the most exhausting moments are rarely about the actual task. They're about the spiral that starts when you feel misunderstood and rush to fix it. The let them practice begins by refusing that spiral. When a colleague misreads your email, misquotes you in a meeting, or assigns motives you didn't have, the habit is to jump into explanation mode, forwarding threads, drafting long clarifications, rehashing the chronology so everyone can see the truth. It feels responsible, but it almost always backfires. The more you try to litigate perceptions, the more you center them. Let them asks you to center your values and outputs instead. If someone attributes a project win to the wrong person, log your contributions where they actually matter. The project doc, the sprint retrospective, your performance journal. When the next cycle of planning arrives, present your plan with data, prototypes, and artifacts, not a defense of your character. In practice, this sounds like, here's the demo. the test coverage, and the timeline we hit. Here are the open risks and what I propose next. You let your actions speak because the best way to correct a narrative is to live a pattern. And if someone persists in seeing you through a distorted lens, you resist the urge to become their optometrist. You become consistent instead. Consistency is not silence in the face of harm. It's the discipline of choosing the right forum for the right problem. When your name is left off a slide, the group chat is a terrible venue for correction. A brief message to the owner, for accuracy. Please add my name to the X module and Y migrations, does the job without theater. If a peer challenges you in a meeting with a tone designed to provoke, you stay anchored to the work. 2 clarifications. The API constraint is documented here, and the rollback plan is in the RFC appendix. Let's table tone and keep moving. If the pattern repeats, you take it offline and establish a boundary. I'm open to critique. I won't continue in meetings that turn personal. If it happens again, I'll exit and follow up with our manager. You are not demanding that they become different. You are declaring how you will participate. That distinction keeps your energy pointed forward. You stop campaigning for respect and build a record that earns it. Most corporate drama is an attention tax. Every time you chase it, your focus, your rarest asset, leaks out of the work that compounds. Let them converts reactivity into an operating system. When a Slack thread heats up, don't feed it with your nervous system. Ask the 3 questions. Is this mine to fix? Is this mine to carry? Is this mine to hold? If it's not, step out, mute the channel for an hour. Finish the spec, ship the small improvement you can own today. The next time your calendar invites you to a meeting about a meeting, ask what decision will be made and what input you uniquely provide. If there is no decision and your presence doesn't change the outcome, decline with context. No decision for my scope, will read the notes. You are letting others have their debates while you invest in outcomes. Over a quarter, this habit separates builders from debaters. It also separates your sense of self from a crowd that needs constant performative certainty. You become the person who keeps promises to the work, not the person who keeps score of slights. The same habit plays differently at home, where the stakes feel deeper because history lives in every conversation. A parent's certainty about the right way can harden into ideology, the correct major, the respectable job, the timeline for marriage and kids. The more you argue, the more entrenched both sides become. Let them. At home is the courage to accept that you may never convert the person who raised you. You give up the fantasy of the perfect speech that heals decades of mismatched values. Instead, you choose a clean, repeatable message and a boundary that honors both sides. I love you. I'm choosing X. I will not debate it. I'll step away if the call turns into a judgment panel. Then you follow through without ceremony. You still show up for birthdays. You still help fix the sink. You just stop hiring your nervous system out to cultural compliance checks. Over time, some families adjust to the clarity and settle into a new equilibrium. Others never will. In both cases, you regain your center because you chose integrity over conversion. When a relative goes on a monologue about how your life is off script, let them. Directs your energy inward. Regulate first. Communicate second. Regulation looks mundane. Unclench your jaw. Feel your feet on the floor. Breathe 3 slow cycles before you answer. That pause is not weak. It's the difference between a day lost to adrenaline and a day reclaimed for your actual priorities. After you breathe, replace defending with deciding. If you decide that relationship matters and debate doesn't, change the activity. I'm not discussing this. Want to help me with the grill? If you decide the topic is unavoidable, shrink the time box. I have 10 minutes to hear you out. Then I'm done for today. If they escalate, enforce the boundary and leave the room. You are not punishing. You are preserving the only mind you're tasked to govern. The win here is not winning the argument. The win is not abandoning yourself while other people perform their pattern. With partners and friends, the practice is clearest when departure becomes part of the story. We romanticize holding on as proof of loyalty, but many relationships erode under the weight of unspoken attempts to edit one another. Let them. Breaks the trance of conditional love. When a partner signals they no longer want to do the work, let them go. The impulse to litigate the past, attempting to extract a confession of fault so your pain feels justified, is understandable and almost always counterproductive. Call it what it is. A last attempt at control. Trading explanations rarely delivers closure. Living the next chapter does. This doesn't mean you ghost or refuse accountability. It means you limit goodbye to what's true and necessary. I care for you. I accept your choice. I'm stepping back to protect my well-being. You do not bait them into a fight as a way to anchor them to you. You do not post subtweets to outsource your grief to a jury. You grieve in private, with friends who can hold silence and soup, not drama and screenshots. When someone you love is struggling, let them can feel cruel. You want to rescue, but often the most compassionate act is to stop cushioning consequences that don't belong to you. If your friend repeatedly borrows and defaults, stop lending. If your partner's drinking ruins every weekend, stop co-signing a calendar of recovery that consists only of apologies. Name your boundary and the consequence you control. I won't be in spaces where alcohol is the main event. If you choose that, I'll choose to go home. You are not forcing their sobriety. You are choosing your environment. You are letting reality teach them instead of intercepting every lesson. That space often accomplishes what lectures never could. Adults learn by contact with the outcomes of their choices. You stop stealing the curriculum. Sometimes letting go is gentler. A friend drifts. Texts slow. Plans never materialize. Instead of inventing a story in which you are the villain or the hero, let them. People are seasonal. Mourn the version of the friendship that ended. Leave the door unlocked without camping on the threshold. Build new routines that don't require constant coordination. If your circle shrinks, fill your time with craft and service, not autopsies. Emotional energy is finite. Ask what life you could be building with the hours you used to spend rereading tone. In public life, the comment threads, DMs, and algorithmic arenas where the attention economy thrives, the rule is simpler. Not every invitation deserves your RSVP. If a stranger attacks your motives, let them. If a follower misreads your post in bad faith, let them. The cost of refuting every misinterpretation is a mind that never gets off the stand. To practice, let them. Online. Build a short list of criteria for engagement. I respond when someone asks an honest question, when a correction improves accuracy, or when silence would harm someone vulnerable. Everything else, ignore, delete, block. The block button is a boundary, not a moral judgment. It's an energy budget tool. Your nervous system is not a community utility. You are allowed to keep it calm. If your livelihood requires public presence, separate the human from the handle with process. Read comments at set times. Never before bed. Don't reply on the first surge of emotion. Draft responses in a notes app. Send only what remains after a walk. Let them. Reminds you that shaping the internet's opinion of you is not your job. Building work worthy of being known is. The core exercises look simple on paper and feel transformative in practice. Start with the 3 breaths. It's a pattern interrupt, a physiological wedge you drive between stimulus and response. The first breath is for the body. Inhale through the nose. Long exhale through the mouth. Unclench the stomach and hands. The second breath is for the story. Silently label what the mind is doing, defending, catastrophizing, proving. The third breath is for choice. Ask, what action serves my values? Not my fear? Commit to the smallest visible action inside your control. Send the draft. Close the tab. Step outside. Repeat this sequence dozens of times a week until it becomes muscle memory. It is mundane. It is power. Next, make the mine, not mine, audit a daily ritual. In the morning or before you shut the laptop, list the top 5 frictions in your head. For each, circle whether it is yours to fix, carry, or hold. Fix means a concrete step exists that is clearly your responsibility. Schedule it. Carry means you have empathy but not ownership. Move it out of your task list and into your prayer. Meditation, or a short check-in message. Hold means you will maintain presence without intervention. Set a time limit for attention so you don't turn compassion into surveillance. Everything else goes to, not mine. Write it on a card if you must, not my weather. You'll be tempted to pick those items back up. Let that urge pass like an itch. Your peace depends on leaving them where they lay. There's also the last word fast, a 1-week experiment that exposes how much pride masquerades as principle. For 7 days, Let the other person have the last public word in any disagreement. Don't correct the parting shot. Don't DM a counterpoint. Don't call a witness. Simply log the exchange and walk away. The goal isn't to make you submissive. It's to prove how many battles end when you stop feeding them. After a week, review the log. Most conflicts will have evaporated without your closing argument. For the rare ones that matter, you can re-engage with a calmer nervous system and a tighter brief. You'll also learn who keeps baiting without substance, a useful filter for future access. Boundary scripts deserve a special note because many people confuse setting them with controlling others. Boundaries are not demands, they are policies about you. Write a few that match your life and rehearse them until they feel natural. I don't discuss my relationship decisions. I step out of meetings when voices are raised. I don't loan money to friends. I can gift X amount. I don't respond to work messages after 7 p.m. Deliver them like weather reports, neutral. Brief, unarguable. If someone tries to litigate your policy, repeat it once, then act on it. The credibility of a boundary lives in its enforcement, not in the size of the speech that announces it. When you enforce without drama, you let them be upset while you remain congruent. That is the quiet posture of a person who stopped equating love with being endlessly available. Because let them can be misread as avoidance. Include an exception protocol when harm is systemic or safety is at stake. You do not let it slide, you escalate appropriately. Let them is a tool for personal peace, not a permission slip for abuse to flourish. In workplaces, that might mean documenting incidents and using formal channels. In families, that might mean involving a counselor or, if necessary, creating distance measured in months, not minutes. The point is not to save your comfort at all costs. The point is to spend your courage on actions that change your life, not on unending attempts to rearrange someone else's personality. Habits need environments, so redesign yours to cue letting go. Turn off most notifications. Put your phone in another room during focused work or family dinners. Create a parking lot list on paper for obsessive thoughts, once written. They're not allowed to loop in your head. Use physical anchors to reset. A short walk around the block after a tense call. 5 minutes of breathwork when you park before going into a difficult house. A cup of water before replying to any message that spikes your heartbeat. Tie these micro rituals to places and times you already inhabit so they require less willpower. Peace becomes the default not because you're superhuman, but because you engineered fewer traps. In culture, let them will look like non-compliance with the outrage economy. You will feel boring when you don't offer a take on every headline. You will feel invisible when you don't correct every misreading. You will also feel your mind return to you. That clarity is not a luxury, it's the precondition for doing meaningful work and loving people well. Your kids don't need a parent who wins every debate. They need a parent whose nervous system isn't constantly hijacked. Your team doesn't need a manager who claps back in threads. They need a manager who ships priorities on time. Your friends don't need a philosopher in every group chat. They need a presence who shows up in person. Who remembers birthdays and sits beside them in waiting rooms. Let the world demand. You decide where you answer. There is one more angle. Letting people feel. If a loved one is grieving, angry, or ashamed, most of us rush to reframe. Look on the bright side. At least, have you tried? It's an honest attempt to help that often lands as control. Let them means you can sit in the room while a storm passes without needing to fix the weather. Offer presence, not platitudes. Ask, do you want comfort or solutions? If they want neither, occupy the silence with your body and your breathing. Emotional regulation is contagious. Your calm gives their nervous system a model. Later, when the wave subsides, ask what support would actually reduce friction in their life meals. A ride, a text to cancel plans. Doing is useful, so is not doing. Learn which is needed and when. In every domain, work, family, love, public life, the most radical effect of let them is the reclaiming of attention. Attention is the steering wheel of your life. Wherever you repeatedly place it becomes your address. If you keep steering into other people's business, you will live there, a permanent resident in neighborhoods you don't own. If you steer back to your side of the street, your home improves. Your craft gets sharper. Your body heals. Your sleep deepens. Your conversations grow kinder because they're no longer smuggled court cases. The practice does not make other people less themselves. It makes you more you. And when you become more you, less entangled, less eager to manage, less addicted to being understood, you get the rarest outcome in a loud world. A steady life that doesn't require constant defense to be real. To keep yourself honest, run a weekly audit. Where did you explain too much? Where did you stay to win an argument you could have left? Where did you accept a bait you could have let pass? Where did you hold a line cleanly? Where did you walk away with your dignity instead of the last word? Reward the wins. A favorite coffee. An early night. A small purchase for your craft. Not because you need treats for basic functioning, but because you're rewiring a well-worn path and the brain learns by incentives. Pair that with a gratitude list specifically about non-interference. I'm grateful I didn't send that second email. I'm grateful I muted the thread. I'm grateful I let my brother have his opinion without turning it into a symposium. Gratitude seals the lesson without self-flagellation. None of this is glamorous. It's everyday work that starts with 3 breaths and a decision. I won't mortgage my peace to purchase the illusion of control. In the office, that means building artifacts instead of narratives. At home, it means choosing connection over conversion. In love, it means letting departure end a chapter without turning it into a trial. Online, it means refusing the constant audition. And in the quiet spaces where your life is actually written, your desk at 6 a.m., the kitchen island at dusk. The drive home after hard news, it means asking the simplest, strongest question a person can learn to ask. Is this mine? If the answer is no, let them be wrong about you. Let them make their choice. Let them live at their pace. And let yourself live at yours. With your attention returned, your energy no longer rented out to other people's storms, and your days reorganized around what you can truly shape, the quality of your work, the clarity of your word, the kindness of your presence, the boundaries that keep your center intact. The biggest misunderstanding about the let them philosophy is thinking it means you sit quietly in the corner while people trample over you. That's not what it is at all. Letting others be who they are is not the same as giving them unlimited access to your energy or tolerating every form of disrespect. It's not passivity. It's clarity. It's not weakness. It's discernment. And it definitely isn't indulgence. The point of let them is not to abandon yourself to the chaos of other people's choices, but to reclaim the authority over your own space, your own attention, and your own life. You're not conceding the field. You're redrawing the boundaries. Think about personal space in a literal sense. If you invite someone into your home and they start knocking over furniture or tracking mud across the floor, you don't have to spend all night following them around with a mop, correcting their every step. You also don't have to scream and throw them out immediately. You simply have the right to decide whether they're allowed to stay and under what conditions. Let them means you stop trying to reprogram the person into someone else and instead focus on your power to regulate access. They can be who they are. You can choose whether that's compatible with who you are. That's not apathy, that's sovereignty. This is crucial because people often weaponize misunderstanding. They'll say, if you're really practicing peace, shouldn't you just tolerate me? But peace is not tolerance of harm. Peace is alignment with truth. And truth says you don't have to fix people, but you also don't have to suffer endlessly from their dysfunction. You can let them behave according to their nature and simultaneously decide that their nature disqualifies them from close proximity to yours. Letting go doesn't mean letting yourself be a punching bag. It means you finally see clearly where your agency ends and where theirs begins. Consider toxic relationships. If a friend constantly belittles you, mocks your dreams, or treats your time as disposable, the old instinct is to argue, explain, or beg them to treat you differently. Let them shifts the posture entirely. You let them reveal who they are without trying to script their behavior. And then you make your move. You don't keep reteaching lessons they don't want to learn. You don't sign up for another round of I'll change, I promise, only to watch the same pattern replay. You exercise your right to step back, to end the friendship, or to restrict access. That's not cruelty, it's integrity. It's choosing not to invest in soil that refuses to grow anything healthy. They get to be themselves. You get to walk away. Both are free. Or imagine an argument where your partner insists on having the last word. You know the cycle. They nitpick. You defend. They escalate. You escalate. And before you know it, A 10-minute disagreement about where to eat dinner has turned into an indictment of your entire relationship. In that moment, let them isn't resignation. It's wisdom. You don't need to score the final point like it's a courtroom drama. You can say, "I hear you," and choose silence. Not silence loaded with resentment, but silence rooted in perspective. This fight isn't worth the slice of my piece it would cost. Let them think they won. What they actually proved is that they need to win more than they need connection. You've chosen clarity over ego. And in the long run, clarity will give you better odds of preserving the relationship than endless petty wars. If it doesn't, then clarity will at least give you the strength to end it with dignity. The Stoics had a phrase for this: not every battle deserves your sword. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the futility of arguing with fools and the waste of energy in chasing every insult. Epictetus reminded his students that when provoked, you can always choose not to engage, not because you are weak, but because you recognize the trap. They knew that to fight constantly is to exhaust the soul. The discipline is not in conquering every enemy but in knowing which enemies aren't even worth acknowledging. Imagine if you actually applied that filter to your life, how many fights would simply disappear? How many emails would remain unsent? How many family gatherings would remain peaceful? Your dignity doesn't come from fighting every war. It comes from choosing the few that align with your deepest values and letting the rest go. Let's be practical. Suppose you have a coworker who thrives on confrontation. They pick apart your work not to improve it but to flex superiority. You could meet them toe to toe every time. But what does that buy you? A reputation for defensiveness, a constant cortisol spike, and hours of lost focus. Instead, let them nitpick, let them show their true colors to the team, and you quietly continue delivering consistent, high-quality results. Over time, the contrast will speak louder than your arguments ever could. Your reputation will grow because you invested in work, not in warfare. They wanted you distracted. You stayed disciplined. That's how boundaries protect not just your peace but your productivity. Boundaries don't always have to be dramatic. Sometimes they're subtle lines that define how you'll be treated. For example, you don't need to tell a friend who's always late that they're a bad person. You just stop waiting an hour at the cafe. You give them 15 minutes. Then you go on with your day. When they arrive and you're gone, the message is clear without a single lecture. You didn't try to change them, you let them be late. But you also let yourself live by your own standard of respect for time. The boundary wasn't about punishing them, it was about protecting you. That's the essence of let them, with borders, the freedom to let others act as they will, paired with the authority to decide what role, if any, they play in your life. The deeper point is that boundaries are not about control, they're about clarity. When you confuse the two, you end up miserable. Control says, you must change so I can be at peace. Clarity says, you can be who you are, and I will choose how close you can get. Control demands compliance. Clarity enforces distance. Control is a losing game. Clarity is a sustainable one. People resist control but respect clarity. And even if they don't respect it, they can't override it because it lives in your choices, not theirs. Of course, this takes practice, because our egos are wired to react. When someone disrespects us, the urge is to prove them wrong, to show them we're strong. But true strength isn't measured in how many battles you fight. It's measured in how many battles you don't need to fight anymore. It's knowing when walking away preserves more dignity than staying to argue. It's understanding that your self-worth is not up for auction every time someone throws shade. It's trusting that silence can be louder than words when it comes from conviction, not cowardice. Take social media as an example. It's a playground for provocation. Someone leaves a nasty comment, misrepresents your words, or questions your motives. The old you spends hours crafting the perfect rebuttal, rallying allies, screenshotting receipts. The let them you shrugs and closes the app. Let them think what they think. Let them rant in a thread you'll never read. Because while they're busy performing outrage, you're busy living. That's the line that separates peace from perpetual war. Your refusal to attend every fight you're invited to. Not because you can't handle it, but because you're too focused on what matters to squander energy on what doesn't. The best part of practicing let them with boundaries is that it simplifies life. You don't have to strategize how to manage every person. You just set your limits and enforce them quietly. If someone is kind, respectful, and aligned with your values, they get closer. If they're toxic, manipulative, or careless with your heart, they stay at a distance. You don't need a speech. You don't need to convince them. You simply live your boundaries. Over time, your circle will naturally filter itself. You'll find yourself surrounded by people who uplift you, not drain you, and the ones who couldn't handle your clarity. Let them drift, let them stew, let them project. They were never your responsibility in the first place. Ultimately, let them is liberation. But liberation with structure. It frees you from the impossible task of fixing others, while reminding you of the very possible task of guarding yourself. It's not passive, it's active self-respect. It's not indulgence, it's intentional living. You don't fight every fight, but you fight the ones that matter. You don't demand others change, but you demand integrity from yourself. And by doing that, you build a life that is less about wrestling with shadows and more about walking in light. Because not every battle deserves your sword, but the battles that do deserve it, the ones aligned with your deepest values, will find you stronger, steadier, and more at peace than you ever were when you were trying to fight them all. Peace does not arrive when the world finally cooperates with you, when people finally understand you, when every interaction goes smoothly, or when life becomes predictable. Peace is not a gift wrapped and delivered by external circumstances. It is something you build, moment by moment, from the inside out. This is the central paradox that so many of us resist. The harder you chase peace through control, the further it gets from you. The moment you start thinking, if only my partner acted differently, if only my boss respected me more, if only my parents accepted my choices, then I could finally be at ease. You've already tied your state of mind to something that isn't yours to command. The truth is blunt. People will misunderstand you. They will misjudge you. They will sometimes fail you. If your serenity is dependent on correcting all of that, you'll never know serenity. Real peace begins when you reclaim your energy from that project of control and redirect it back into yourself. This is where the discipline of "let them" becomes more than a clever phrase. It becomes a spiritual and psychological practice. At first it feels unnatural, even impossible. You have been conditioned from childhood to equate caring with fixing, to equate love with management, to equate leadership with control. Letting go feels like negligence. But with repetition, you realize that letting people be who they are is not abandonment. It's respect for them and for yourself. It respects them enough to allow them the dignity of their own choices. And it respects you enough to not turn your life into an endless tug of war with other people's behavior. Let them is not a one-time epiphany. It is a daily discipline, something you practice in small, unglamorous moments. When a coworker takes credit for an idea, when a friend cancels plans, when a stranger is rude, when a loved one doesn't respond the way you hoped. Each time you resist the reflex to over-explain, overreact, or over-control, you build the muscle of peace. And just like going to the gym, the growth comes from repetition. The most liberating shift happens when you learn to release expectations. Expectations are the invisible contracts we write in our heads that no one else signs. You expect your friend to text you back immediately. You expect your spouse to anticipate your needs. You expect your family to share your values. When those expectations go unmet, you feel hurt and betrayed. But what was actually betrayed was not a promise, it was a fantasy. The discipline of "let them" invites you to live without those invisible contracts. It doesn't mean you stop hoping or stop wanting. It means you stop demanding. It means you stop making your happiness conditional on other people's compliance. This is what it means to live your essence, to let your values, your actions, your integrity be the source of your identity, not someone else's approval. Imagine how much lighter your days would be if you stopped needing others to constantly validate you. Imagine how much energy you'd recover if you stopped rehearsing all the ways people could disappoint you and started building the life you want regardless. Another critical lesson is that not everything requires your reaction. The modern world is engineered to provoke. Social media thrives on outrage. Workplaces reward those who appear constantly responsive. Family dynamics often revolve around who can out-argue whom. If you don't learn the art of selective silence, you will burn yourself out attending battles that don't even belong to you. Let them is a filter. It trains you to ask, is this worth my sword? More often than not, the answer is no. Someone criticizes you unfairly online? Let them. A neighbor spreads gossip? Let them. A colleague rolls their eyes? Let them. Not because those things don't sting, but because your energy is too valuable to be spent proving yourself in arenas that yield no real victory. The most powerful people are not the ones who win every argument, they are the ones who no longer need to. Choosing not to react is not weakness. It is mastery of self. It's the power to decide that your energy will be invested in creation, not in conflict. And ironically, when you stop feeding every fire, most of them go out on their own. This principle also transforms how we understand love. Many of us were taught that love means prevention. That if we really care, we won't let the people we love make mistakes or suffer. But real love is not control, it's respect for growth. Sometimes that means stepping back and letting someone learn through consequence. A parent who micromanages their child's every decision robs them of the resilience that only comes from failure. A partner who tries to shape the other into a new personality is not loving them, but erasing them. A friend who constantly rescues you may actually be keeping you weak. Love without space is not love, it is fear. The strongest form of love is the kind that says, I'm here with you, but I will not interfere with your path. I trust that your journey, even when painful, will teach you what you need to know. That kind of respect liberates both people. It liberates the giver from the burden of control and liberates the receiver from the weight of being constantly managed. In that space, real intimacy grows not because you agree on everything, but because you allow each other the freedom to become. Modern mindfulness traditions echo this wisdom. The practice of meditation is, in many ways, a practice of let them applied to your own mind. Thoughts arise, judgments, memories, anxieties, fantasies, and the instruction is not to fight them, not to suppress them, but simply to let them be. Let them pass. Let them float across the sky of your awareness like clouds. Zen uses the metaphor of the mind as a mirror. It reflects what passes in front of it without clinging, without distortion. A mirror does not chase an image, does not plead with it to stay or beg it to leave. It simply shows what is and then returns to clarity when the image is gone. When you practice, let them, with people, you are practicing the same discipline, letting their behavior pass through your awareness without becoming entangled, without rewriting your self-worth based on their image of you. Just as mindfulness returns you to the present moment, let them returns you to your own center. It breaks the habit of outsourcing your peace to the world's noise. To see how this works in real life, imagine two scenarios. In the first, you read a cruel comment online. You spend hours composing the perfect rebuttal, calling friends to vent, replaying the comment in your mind. Your whole day is hijacked by one stranger's words. In the second scenario, you read the same comment, feel the sting, take 3 breaths, whisper, let them, and close the app. The rest of your day unfolds as planned. The difference is not in the world, it's in you. Or picture a family gathering where an uncle makes a judgmental remark about your career. In the old pattern, you snap back, the table erupts, everyone takes sides, and the evening is poisoned. In the new pattern, you smile, change the subject, and later excuse yourself for a walk. The uncle remains himself, but you remain yourself too, unshaken, steady, free. That's the core. Peace is not the absence of provocation. Peace is the presence of your own clarity. Ultimately, all of this returns to one truth. Peace is an inside job. It cannot be imported from compliance, applause, or agreement. It can only be cultivated through the daily discipline of letting go of control, of expectations, of unnecessary reactions. Let them is not a slogan, it's a way of moving through the world that reclaims your energy, honors your boundaries, and restores your center. It's a choice you make in the small moments that add up to a life. The email you don't send, the argument you don't fuel, the silence you allow, the dignity you protect, and the more you practice, the freer you become, not because people stop being difficult, but because you stop making their difficulty your prison. From this moment, every time you feel the urge to fix, to argue, to control, pause, breathe, ask yourself if this is really yours to carry. And if it isn't, whisper quietly to yourself, let them. That is where your freedom begins. That is where peace stops being something you chase and starts being something you embody. And when you embody it, no one can take it from you. If you've made it this far, It means something inside you already knows the truth. The battle you've been fighting out there is actually a battle you've been fighting in here. You don't need another 10-step program to make people nicer. You don't need the perfect comeback for every insult. You don't need the whole world to finally see your worth. What you need is to reclaim your energy from the endless project of managing, fixing, and explaining and pour it back into living. Let them is not about abandoning the world. It's about finally showing up in it with clarity. It's about remembering that every ounce of attention you waste trying to control others is an ounce you've stolen from your own growth. When you stop trying to hold everyone else together, you finally have the hands free to build the life you actually want. Think about what we've covered. Control masquerades as care but always ends in exhaustion. Expectations turn love into pressure. Constant reaction robs you of your power. But boundaries, clarity, and silence, these are not signs of weakness. They are signs that you finally understand the job description of your own soul. Your job is not to fix people. Your job is to choose how you respond, how you protect your center, and how you spend the limited time you've been given on this earth. So the next time you feel the urge to argue, to defend, to manipulate someone into seeing it your way, stop. Breathe 3 times. Ask yourself, is this mine to fix? Is this mine to carry? Is this mine to hold? If the answer is no, then you know what to do. Let them walk their path while you walk yours. Let them miss out on your growth if they choose not to see it. Let them drift if they're not meant to stay. Let them think whatever they think, because their thoughts do not define your reality. And here's the deeper truth. When you practice this consistently, you don't just find peace, you become peace. You become the person who can sit calmly in chaos, who can disagree without rage, who can walk away without bitterness. You become the mirror, the one Zen speaks of, reflecting reality without clinging or distortion. You become the kind of person who no longer leaks energy into pointless fights, but instead radiates it into the work, the love, and the life that matters. And in a noisy, divided, chaotic world, that kind of presence is revolutionary. Now I want you to imagine something. Imagine if millions of people began practicing this today. Imagine if, instead of constant outrage, endless judgment, and exhausting battles for control, people learned to breathe, to pause, to whisper quietly. Let them. The entire atmosphere of our world would shift. Workplaces would be calmer, families would be freer, relationships would be healthier, and individuals, you and me, would finally reclaim the clarity that has been ours all along. So as we close, I want to leave you with this call to action. Don't let this just be a nice video you forget tomorrow. Practice it. When you feel triggered, stop. When you feel misunderstood, pause. When someone tests your boundaries, remember you can choose silence. You can choose distance. You can choose dignity. Every time you whisper those 2 words, you are training your nervous system to choose freedom over fear. And one last thing, if this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, it helps it reach more people. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the wisdom that can transform your daily life. And if you feel called to support this work directly, consider clicking the super thanks button. Every gesture of support keeps this channel alive, keeps this community growing, and allows us to keep having these conversations that matter. From this moment forward, every time you feel the urge to fix, to argue, to control, just breathe, smile, and whisper quietly to yourself, let them. That is where your freedom begins. That is where peace finally stops being something you chase and starts being something you embody. And once you embody it, no one, not critics, not chaos, not even your own fear, can ever take it away.